Live from a bunker in the heart of the Ozarks, a podcast that's opposed to wishes because they're genetic engineering. It's Sif Pop. Welcome to Sif Pop Weekly, streaming live most Saturday mornings, or available to download later in your podcast feed, unless, of course, you're a patron.
Patrons get perks.
Patrons get those perks.
Woo!
I'm your host, Aaron Dicer, and he's a psychic like the Lady of Galadrim. It's Andrew Ormsby, ladies and gentlemen.
Ahoy!
Each week we'll chat about movies, TV, and whatever else from the pop culture universe is on our minds. And please welcome our guest this week. She would absolutely invite you to Queer Bowling Night. It's Lo, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, guys, it is good to see you. Lo, great to have you back on the show. It's been a hot second. I didn't want to wait until we got the sequel to your favorite Charlize Theron property.
It's happening. I've been tweeting about it. I'm sure you've seen.
We thought we'd get you on a little bit before that. We are going to talk about the movie Not Okay, which is streaming on Hulu. And we're also going to talk about George Miller's new movie, 3,000 Years of Longing, which is showing in theaters. And do a best ever challenge on best ever wishing films that center around wishes. And then, of course, we'll do some buried treasure at the end as well. Anything you guys have on your minds that you want to get off your chest before we begin?
There is nothing on my mind I want to get off my chest.
Okay, I mixed my metaphors a little bit. Is there anything on your chest that you would like to get off your mind, before we begin? I will say we're kind of buzzing after having just talked about House of the Dragon on the Sif Pop members only pre-show. It's a really interesting time. We mentioned this couple weeks ago. TV is just kind of throwing all the fantasy at us right now. Lord of the Rings is going to be coming out here soon, as well, and so it's an interesting time to be reviewing also a fantasy movie, about gin and wishes and all that kind of stuff. So it is back in the public consciousness, and we're going to chat about it. Let's go ahead and get started with a review of 3,000 Years of Longing. A lonely and bitter British woman discovers an ancient bottle while on a trip to Istanbul and unleashes a djinn who offers her 3 wishes. Filled with apathy, she is unable to come up with one until his stories spark in her a desire to be loved. 3,000 Years of Longing, as mentioned, is George Miller's latest film. It is a fantasy film starring Idris Elba in there, and the name just slipped my brain. It's not
Tilda Swinton.
Tilda Swinton, thank you. Tilda Swinton. I wanted to say Cate Blanchett. I'm just back in the Lord of the Rings.
You are.
Tilda Swinton and Idris Elba in this one. What did you guys think? Did you like it, love it, dislike it, hate it, or it was just okay? Lo, you first.
Oh gosh. I loved about 3/4 of it, and it was just okay. It didn't stick the landing for me.
So does that end you in the liked it? Would you say overall you liked it?
Yeah, probably split the difference in that.
Okay.
I liked it. Yeah.
All right. Andrew, what about you?
It's funny because I have the exact same feelings as Lo. I like 3/4 of it, but it didn't stick the landing. It didn't stick the landing enough to where I'm going to say I did not like it.
Ooh.
Yeah, the landing can do that to you sometimes. I also have very mixed feelings on this. I'm going to land on the high side of it. It's okay. It's fine. It's fine. I just am a little bit perplexed by the fact that this movie goes where it goes after it starts where it starts. It's just wait a second, what is this? So we'll get into it a little bit. Let's get a little more in detail. What were some of the things you liked? Lo, it sounds like you liked it the most. What are some of your thoughts? Yeah, your favorite movie of the year. So tell us your thoughts.
I guess I really enjoy the sort of homage and love letter to storytelling. I think that's a great and worthy thing to make a movie about, and I think that they do a really good job of that through that first 2/3, first 3/4 of the movie. I think that they present 2 really interesting characters and do some really subtle character work with them, and then just kind of throw that character work out the window for the end. in my opinion.
No,
Obviously.
I tend to agree with your opinion. Andrew, some thoughts?
Yeah, George Miller has always been a visual master. There are some shots in here that are really, like jaw dropping, but at the same time, there are other shots in this movie that just reek of, rushed CGI. I mean, it's nothing near as the visual masterpiece that Fury Road was, like not even close. But he does work with colors in a very fascinating way in this movie, and I can appreciate that.
Yeah, I want to jump off that a little bit. I think it was my favorite part of the movie was the visual storytelling. I think this is a really beautiful movie to look at.
Yeah.
And I think from start to finish, I think there are some pretty amazing and interesting things to visualize. The storytelling is great, and I think what we're feeling here, and if I'm correct, this was based on a book of short stories, The Gin and the Nightingale's Eye. And so I think what we're seeing are some of these short stories, and then trying to put them all together in this larger context is the part that kind of falters a little bit. But the short stories are interesting and full of humanity. Another thing I really liked about this is you can't say this phrase without giggling, but it's an adult movie, right? Like it's not a movie meant for, to tell stories to children. It's a movie meant to tell stories to adults. And that's not something we get a lot of. We get a lot of the movies where kids will get this part, adults will get this part, we'll sneak it in, that kind of stuff. And this movie's like, no. This, we're telling sensual stories, we're telling interesting stories, we're not worried about dumbing that down. And as such, it is rated R, for many of those reasons. But I kind of liked that. I kind of thought that was, something that gave this movie a leg up a little bit. So, overall, I was really enjoying the storytelling, especially the short story parts of the movie. Yeah. What are some other thoughts you guys had?
I will say this. I don't mean to throw it into the negatives immediately, just like conversation wise. I think that Tilda Swinton and Idris Elba have absolutely atrocious chemistry.
This is almost it's interesting. I go back and forth on this. I went back and forth on this during the movie, whether I bought into their chemistry or not, because the movie sets up the Alethea character as this independent, don't need love. It's not something that defines me. And I'm like, yeah, cool, great, love this. Yeah. And then when it tries to turn that knob, it tries to turn that dial, and I'm like, wait a second, like
it's a completely different character now.
Correct. And so I at some point was like, that's okay too. Like it's not bad that this person has desire or wants love or whatever. It's just when you compare the two parts of the movie, you find a real difficulty in figuring out who this person is. And I think what you're supposed to believe is that the way this person finishes is who they were the whole time. Yeah. And that that was just, hiding within them. But either Tilda does such a good job at acting as the independent woman, or it's written in that way so well that it's you almost don't buy it that it was in there the whole time. You know what I mean? You really buy that that's who she was. So yeah, it was difficult. What did you think of that, Lo?
Yeah, I feel like, and my gosh, Tilda Swinton is a phenomenal actress. Like this is not so I feel like it must be in the writing or directing where this went wrong, but there is it's like a switch flipped at that kind of 3/4 mark where she was playing one character and then suddenly was playing another, or even that she wasn't playing another character, that they just told us she was a different character, because I got none of that sort of longing from her. There was no build up in her reactions. She seemed interested in from a scholar's perspective, which is what we're told that she is. We're told that she's a scholar of stories and she's interested, but there's none of this like slowly succumbing to her desire, and I kind of feel like that's what they wanted us to believe was happening. There's
a swallow that comes out of nowhere and then everything has changed.
Yep.
And it's like, what? Yeah. Yeah, I found that really interesting.
Because the entire movie, after she's introduced to the Jinn, the entire movie, all the movie is talking about is the ramifications in the moral conundrums of wish fulfillment, and her talking, like, whenever it's not him telling, his stories, it's her trying to read into, the pitfalls, of, making a wish. And the whole movie, she's like, no, I'd rather not make a wish, because I know that, how do I know that you're a trickster? Like, she's not trusting of him. She's listening to his stories with great interest, but I don't think there's any trust. And then out of nowhere, there's a swallow. And
yeah.
And it felt very unearned. Very unearned. And another issue with this movie, man, I really hate. I didn't hate this movie, but it seems like spending way more time talking about negatives than positives right now. But another issue with this movie is I think the movie, if it does want to focus on this potential romance, it spent way too much time on the fables and the stories, like, as opposed to those fables and stories being a like a guiding, a guide for the audience, they actually became the movie instead of, like an aspect of the movie.
Yeah.
I think that they could have made that work because all of those stories were pretty sexual by nature in one way or another. And I think that just keeping it as it was, but making those scenes in the interim, the little interjection scenes, being a little bit more on that she's slowly becoming enthralled despite herself type of thing. But they didn't really play into that at all. So it makes it seem like those scenes in the hotel room are so starkly different from the fables that we're watching.
Yeah, it's almost like the movie doesn't know if it's, the Ballad of Buster Scruggs, or if it's, trying to be where it's a series of vignettes, or if it's actually, a cohesive story about a protagonist. And if Tilda Swinton is our protagonist, then we don't get quite enough development of that character and understanding. And if it's supposed to be just vignettes, we don't actually get quite enough of those for it to actually be just a series of vignettes. So it kind of tries to serve two masters, and
exactly,
it wishes for unlimited wishes, and that's just that's not okay.
The biggest issue with this movie, the biggest issue is, and I'm going to try and talk around this, whenever two characters really want to connect towards the end of this movie, an obstacle, I guess you could say, is placed in front of them. And for one reason, this obstacle makes you go, okay, so you can't stay here. If you really wished for love and stuff like that, why wouldn't you go with them? Like,
also, I feel like they forget that it was Turkey, right? Where she was in the beginning is like a first world country. Like, it's not.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
The issue that was happening would be happening where they were before too.
100%.
Yeah.
As we said in our movie a couple weeks ago, 100%.
100%. Yeah. This is one of those movies, the more I think about it, the more I'm like, yeah. But then I go back to just like, it was kind of a pleasure to watch. Like, it was, like the different stories that were told were interesting. We haven't talked about the sense of humor in this movie, which I think is prevalent. You don't often see this level of pratfall or comedy in a movie that's supposed to be this romantic or sensual or whatever. I felt like the movie was very naturalistic with its nudity, with different things like that. Like, it didn't feel exploitative. It just felt like, I don't know. There were things about this movie where I was like, I want more movies like this. Like, this is really interesting to me. It's not cliche. Like, there's not a cliche going on here. There's not a trope going on here where I'm like, I've seen this a million times before. But then again, the way it ends, it kind of does turn into a trope. And so then I'm like, oh, why were we doing this the whole time? I thought this was a interesting, different kind of movie than this. So yeah, it really is one of those cognitive dissonance movies for me, where it's just like, I think I kind of love watching this movie, and also I think it may be a bad movie. I think it's just messy. I just think it's really messy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very messy. I just taking all that in. I'm like, he's 100% right.
Yep.
Yeah.
I gotta say, I was really enthralled with all of the stories that he was telling about his life. They really, each one, I wasn't like really sad to see the previous one go, and was excited to watch the next one each time, because they were all very interesting and unique and really informed his character. And yeah, so that part of it I was so into, and it was just that sort of 180 at the end that got me.
Yeah, but the movie, and it's like I said, the movie isn't supposed to be about those stories. The movie's supposed to be about these two, and if there's something going on between them, then that's supposed to be the main focus of the movie. It's not supposed to be the stories. The stories are supposed to be a guide, and they're not. They are the movie. So the rest of the movie doesn't make sense.
Yeah, you kind of have to pick a lane. Like it can be about the stories if you find a way to make Idris Elba and Tilda Swinton kind of platonic partners in storytelling, right? Like where there's this idea where they find each other and they become the piece that's missing, and it doesn't necessarily have to be romantic. Maybe there's some, question of desire and romance and those kind of things, but it's really more the idea that there's a completion between them, that she's able to tell stories better now because of his understanding of, art and those kind of things.
Well, I sort of thought that it was going in the direction of her intellect and her speciality being able to help him out of a conundrum that he had.
Yes,
right.
Yes, that isn't such a good movie.
That is like, she did end up helping him, but that isn't how she helped him. And she just helped him the way that we knew would help.
Well, this is the other version of the movie that I think works. Yeah. Like, and you have to pick one of these, this idea that possibly we're in a movie, because the movie sets up a lot of, is he a trickster? Is he for real? Does he really care about the people that, he's giving wishes to? Or is he trying to trick her into making wishes so that he can, do his thing? And so is he a trickster god or is he not? And like the movie just all of a sudden becomes uninterested in that tension. Like that tension completely disappears. So the other movie is where you actually pay off that tension, where you actually have a moment where maybe he was trying to trick her, but her intellect was able to not only avoid the trick, but also change him and his ability to interact with who he is, like where she becomes, like you say, the catalyst to something different for him. The movie is just uninterested in playing either of those scenarios to their completion in a satisfying way. And it's just so unsatisfying at the end.
You know what I wanted? I wanted My Dinner with Andre, but Andre was a genie. It's just two people talking back and forth. And yeah, you can still have the flashbacks, but mainly there's no romantic, connection between the two. It's a battle of theological and philosophical ideologies to like the ramifications of wishes and dreams and stuff like that. That is the movie I wanted.
I've often said that you can many times tell what a movie is trying to say by where it leaves you. What is the final scene? What is what are the final moments? And in a movie like this, it's really disappointing because it means that what this movie was about is kind of the same thing that every romance movie for in the history of time has been about. And this kind of gendered stereotype of women just want to be swept off their feet. Like that's what this movie is about, right? Like, a big strong man to come sweep a woman off her feet. Oh yeah, she's pretending to be all independent but what she really wants is a man to sweep her off her. Like, is that like? Let me ask you this: do you feel like this movie is saying that by the way it ends?
Yeah,
a little bit.
Isn't that disappointing? Isn't that supremely disappointing?
Why go through all the trouble of making such a fresh, unique environment whenever you're just going to tell the same old troped up story?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you think of the sort of, I think, set up and then kind of ignored option that this is all in her head?
Yeah.
Okay, so
Unreliable narrator.
This is another thing that, and again, it kind of plays to the fact that this movie just isn't interested in paying off its setups, which is you don't have to pay off every setup, but at least pay off one or two of them. You know, because we're dealing with, when this movie starts, we're dealing with strange things, and is she really seeing these things, or and then it just, again, drops that completely, and we're just like, no, this is real. This is real.
It's funny because, you know, she has a method that she uses, you know, like counting to know what's, you know, real and what's not. Here's the issue. We've never seen that work. So we don't know if it's a viable method that she's using to tell whether something's real or not, because we've never seen it work.
Yep. Let's move into one final thing. I think we've talked our way through this mess of a movie. You know, I still think it's one of those movies that's, you know, it's fine. But what do you have? What's your one last thing? Any final words you want to say about George Miller's 3,000 Years of Longing?
I wished for no post-credit scene, and I was granted my wish.
Congratulations. Hello?
I am not sad that I watched it. I'm not disappointed that I watched it, but I don't think I'll ever watch it again.
Fair enough. Yeah, I think it's a slight recommend from me, just for the visuals, if nothing else. If you have like a movie subscription, see it in a theater. I think it's worth it on the big screen. There's some really gorgeous visuals. My one last thing is probably that this title makes no sense to me, because 3,000 Years of Longing would have to be about the genie. And
he would have had to have prior knowledge of her.
And yes, so I'm very confused by this title. All right, let's move on, shall we?
3,000 years of randiness.
Yes, something like that.
Is that what it is?
All right, let's move on to our next review. Let's talk a little bit about Not Okay. An ambitious young woman desperate for followers and fame fakes a trip to Paris to up her social media presence. When a terrifying incident takes place in the real world and becomes part of her imaginary trip, her white lie becomes a moral quandary that offers her all the attention she's wanted. It's not a moral quandary. There's no quandary about this. Let's talk about Not Okay. Did you like it, love it, dislike it, hate it, or it was just okay? Let's start with you, Andrew. What do you got?
Hated it.
Hated it. Big old hated it from Andrew.
Really?
I ain't going first this week, I'll tell you that.
This will be interesting.
I'm going with liked it. I liked this movie. Kind of dead center of liked it. Lo, what do you got?
I loved it.
All right, let's go.
Yeah.
Lo, you get to kick us off again. Tell us about your love for Not Okay.
Well, I think part of it is that I'm a big musical theater fan, and this did everything right that Dear Evan Hansen did wrong.
Great point.
No, it doesn't.
In talking about like actual ramifications of something like this happening. And I think that it does a really good job of showing this sort of unrealistic world that the main character lives in, crashing into a very realistic world that Rowan's character is living in, and showing that sort of cognitive dissonance between your online persona and what the actual world is going through and what's happening. And yeah, I super loved it.
Yeah, I'm with you. One of my favorite things about this movie is how it's almost satire, but it's not. Like when you start to really put your feet down in this world, you can see how something like this might actually happen, and it does eventually treat its protagonist with the respect of an authentic character and not just a satirical stereotype. And I really, really liked that. I think the performances are really good. Zoe Deutsch is amazing as Danny Sanders. Mia Isaac, I think, deserves awards attention.
Amazing.
One pro of this movie is she is one of my favorite performances of the year.
Yeah, Mia Isaac is incredible in this movie, and I think brings the movie up, quite a bit. So So I think, yeah, when you've got those performances, the movie is definitely, saying something about our current culture and the appeal of being famous at all costs, all of that stuff. Yeah, I really, really dug it.
All
Andrew,
right,
did you
Andrew, tell us why we're wrong.
Yeah, Andrew, did you have any other positives other than Mia Isaac, or do you just want to head into some of your negatives?
No, we can keep going with your guys' positives, and then we'll just get around to my giant rant at the end.
Go ahead and do it. Go ahead and do it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's your turn to talk.
Danny, our main character, is a psychopath.
Mm-hmm.
Pure psychopath. I think you brought up Dear Evan Hansen. I think this movie is less Dear Evan Hansen and more I Care a Lot, which was the what's her name? Rosamund Pike. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is more like you hate this character from minute one and you hate them all the way till the very end. You're supposed to. I'm not saying that that's a fresh take for Andrew.
No. It's really interesting. The movie starts with did you see the warning on this movie at the beginning where it's like, beware, there's flashing strobe lights, triggering situation, I forget what it mentioned, and an unlikable female protagonist. That was one of the warnings at the beginning, was that the female protagonist was unlikable. I thought that was hilarious.
Okay, so
amazing.
Is this movie satirical, or is it supposed to be like a look at, what could possibly happen whenever you let your desire for fame and notoriety get ahead of you? Because the difference between this and Dear Evan Hansen is there were moments in Dear Evan Hansen where he wasn't making the choice to benefit himself totally. Like in Dear Evan Hansen, I felt like the first time he went over to the parents' house and he did plan on, saying like, no, we weren't really friends, it's just all big misunderstanding. But he told that lie in the beginning initially, I think, because he wanted to, not paint their son as somebody who didn't have any friends. Here, every single decision that Danny makes is cringeworthy and like totally tone deaf and just evil. A lot of these decisions are evil. When an evil person, maybe this is how Aaron felt whenever he watched Joker, like watching a character and you're like, I'm not supposed to like this person. Why am I liking this person? Why is this the protagonist? She is not the protagonist. She is the antagonist. This is There Will Be Blood, except, that was a good movie where you follow the villain around the entire time.
Yeah, I think to answer your initial question about whether or not this is satire or trying to live in an authentic world, and I addressed this a little bit, I think the movie wants to have it both ways and also manages to have it both ways. And here's how I think it does it. I think what it manages to do is when it feels like satire, it's because our main character is not connected to the real world. Because Danny is so disconnected from what reality actually is, she is living in the false reality of social media, right? And because of that, that's able to be a little more satirical because our main character isn't in the real world. I think what's amazing about this movie is it tries to portray what an awakening looks like from coming from the fantasy world of social media to the actual real world. And the character of Mia Isaac is kind of the catalyst for the Rowan character, I should say, is kind of the catalyst for that transition. And you do see Danny start to make a transition from going, oh, wait, there are actual authentic emotions in this world. There are actual authentic people in this world. And because of that, I think what's amazing for me is that this movie allows us to see the transition of, you say psychopathic, I think that's a little hyperbole. I think she's delusional. I think she's just delusional. She's stuck in her own fantasy world. I don't think she's disconnected from the ability to understand emotion or understand, but because nothing is real to her, because she is delusion, she makes choices because it's just like making a choice in a video game or just like making a choice in, a book or whatever. It's not, there is no real world. It's all just this fantasy social media kind of thing. And I think what we're able to see, or what the movie does so expertly, is that awakening of her ability to then go, oh, wait, people do have real trauma. People do have real lives. And the trick the movie does, it is allows her to grow without redeeming her, which is really interesting.
Which is the big problem that I've always had, and a lot of people, I'm not alone here, have had with Dear Evan Hansen, is that you take this, poor little white boy who made a mistake, and he doesn't get in any trouble, and even the girl that he lied to the entire time about her own brother is like, I forgive you. I like that Rowan does not forgive Danny. I like that Danny is still sitting with that emotion as the credits roll, that she's like, okay, I don't deserve her forgiveness. I don't deserve closure. I did something awful and I need to move forward with that. And I think in this day and age where we're always talking about cancel culture and all this sort of stuff, that it's honestly an admirable thing to show somebody who has effed up that much to say, you know what? I don't need to make this about me. I don't need to atone or explain or do anything. I just need to like not be a part of this anymore. And
exist in my consequences.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I thought it was a really interesting way to progress that. So to answer that question, Andrew, I do think it is both, but only because the character allows it to be both by their progression. So yeah.
You say progression and awakening, but that progression and awakening comes with literally, because I looked, 12 minutes left in the movie. So
yeah, I'm not sure. My first part of it is, I mean, I think it starts when Rowan is introduced. There's subtle things that happen from the second Rowan is introduced.
Oh yeah, I mean, it was like the time when she finds out about her sister, the time when she finds out that her mom was also there. I think honestly, from the first time that she's at that group, there's a couple of moments where she's like, oh.
Yeah, these people are talking about something real, like real trauma. Yeah.
Honestly, whenever I saw those parts, I saw a character going, oh, that's sad. That is a sad moment. Not, oh, I am being awoken to how, my actions could potentially, affect somebody else. It's more along the lines of, that's a sad story. I will be sad. And that's why I think this is psychotic. This is a psychotic person, because she's having those thoughts of, oh, this is sad, so I should act sad. Because in the next scene, she is back to, perpetuating and, expanding this lie to do nothing but further her own notoriety and fame. She's not saying that whenever we're talking about, like you said, the sister, she's not saying, oh, this is now real for me. I never once got the notion from this character of, oh, this is real. It only became bad for her whenever she got caught. This is a character who was sad that they were no longer at the top of the world. I didn't buy for a second that at the end she was going to make amends or, look for empathy or, forgiveness or anything like that. I never once bought that. The movie may have tried to make me think it, but I didn't buy it. Not for a second.
I don't think that. I think the movie does the opposite of that. I think the literal last segment, by the way, this is another thing I wanted to mention. Like all the movies now have interstitial titles. Like there are so many movies now that have like chapter breaks. It's like this. It's like this.
Both of the ones we reviewed today.
Yes, yeah. It's so interesting to me. But even that the last chapter, I think, is something along the title of the part where I don't get redeemed or something like that. I think the movie is very clear that it's not trying to make us feel like this person has been redeemed. It does want us to feel like this person may have changed, but that doesn't mean that anything is absolved or anything is okay.
No, I'm not saying that there should be absolution in this movie, but I am saying that I don't think this character is looking for redemption either. It's too big of a tangent for me to go on to because we got way more of a show to do. So I'm just going to stick with I hate this movie.
Yeah, no, I
Fair.
Yeah, absolutely. Everybody has their own reaction. Lo, did you have anything else you wanted to talk about with this one? Want to talk about Dylan O'Brien a little bit?
Oh, stop. Listen, just because he's one of my favorite actors doesn't mean that was why I loved this movie. In fact, watching this movie the first time, I was like, oh, no.
No, Dylan,
no, Dylan. Stop, Dylan.
Yeah.
He's good in the role, and I think that the role is an interesting side character when we're talking about social media and sort of the dangers of losing yourself to that persona.
He's also part of her awakening.
Absolutely.
There's a sex scene in this movie that is, I think, one of the key transitions to this character coming out of delusion.
Watching him just be a complete jerk through and through, even when they aren't doing social media stuff and when it really, really matters, and that he could not give less of a heck that she's having something extremely traumatic happening. That's definitely a moment for her, for sure. Yeah. And I also like the moment where he breaks. I mean, it's played for laughs, and it's a funny moment where he's like, come on, man, like when the person pushes back on his like accent. But that's just showing you that even this comedic side character is totally a front, complete their own BS.
I found this is one of my negatives. I found the avenue of the reveal of the exposure to be a little bit on the nose. And I wish that could have been handled a little more, I don't know, just a little less tropey. It just felt like every other, like you knew it was coming. You knew exactly, what was going to happen. And I just wish it had been a little more key to the story, to her story in some way. I kept wondering how she was going to get found out. I assumed it might be because the truth of the way most people get found out when they're in a lie is they offer too many, details publicly. And then once it went public and she had said, oh, I saw the guy. Like, I thought that's how she was going to get found out, is the police were going to come to her and go, hey, if you saw this guy, we need to ask you some questions. Like, and that just
she did reveal herself by revealing too many details, but it was on the micro scale of just to one person as opposed to, Yeah.
Well, and that person was prying too. It wasn't like her offering unasked for. So that was one of my negatives. Was I did feel the actual exposure was a little bit on the nose and quick. It just was like, there and gone in a second. It was more of a plot point than effective story telling. So yeah.
This is neither here nor there, but it makes me laugh. I'm looking at the cast list, and the actor that played the character Kelvin, who repeatedly called himself Kelvin and was like, my name's not Kevin, it's Kelvin, is listed as Kevin. I think that's funny.
That is funny. And it was one of my favorite laugh lines too, when he started to question whether his name was Kelvin or Kevin, because she was like, no, it's Kevin. I'm pretty sure it's Kevin. That made me laugh quite a bit. I kind of like that character, actually. I thought that was funny. So there you go.
Well, you know who that is, don't you?
No.
That's Dopinder from the Deadpool movies.
It is.
Yeah. That's right.
Karan, I think his last name is Sony or Sani.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. So there you go. Any final thoughts? One last thing on Not Okay.
No post-credit scene. That was my second wish.
Lo, you got anything?
I love a red beret moment.
You gotta get the red beret moment.
Yes.
I guess my one last thing, when the title on this movie came up, it was Not Okay, and then they added the AY after, like they were all, either they added them consecutively or they were all different colors. I know they were all different colors.
It was red, white, and blue.
It was red, white, and blue. But I also thought for some reason it would faded in not and then okay, the letters, and then the AY after that. I could be wrong. Either way, my brain went not okay And so now I keep thinking this movie is not okay.
That's the alternate universe version where she goes
the
to
Canadian
Canada.
version.
Yes, that's right.
Not okay, eh?
There you go. There's your thoughts on Not Okay. I would say a recommend from Lo and I, especially if you just got Hulu, just throw that on and see what you think. Andrew would say no, stay away, not worth your time.
Probably.
Not unless you love psychopaths.
Yeah.
In that case, give it a watch. All right, before we head on to our best ever challenge, do want to thank our amazing Sif Pop members. We mentioned we do a pre-show for our members where we talk about other stuff just for you. And this week we talked about House of the Dragon and Game of Thrones and kind of chatted about our excitement for a new Game of Thrones series, how we felt about the premiere. If you're interested in being a Sif Pop member, go to patreon.com/SiftPop. So all you got to do is look at the different options there and see what you want to do to help out. It means the world to us. It's mind-blowing and humbling that anybody would throw a couple bucks our way every month to keep this thing going. And we thank you for doing that. Really can't do it without you. So appreciate it. That's patreon.com/SiftPop, SIFTPOP. And thanks again to all those who support. All right, on to the best ever challenge. We're going to do best ever wishing films. You could probably play around with this one a little bit. I don't think we're going to be too crazy strict about this, but let's go number 5 to number 1. If you have it higher than somebody who mentions it, you can go to Trump, and we'll wait to talk about it until the person who has it the highest on their list. Let's start with Andrew this week.
Me?
Yeah, what do you got at number 5?
I'm going to go with Big Tom Hanks.
Nice. That was in my honorable mentions.
Same.
Yeah, it's a fun movie, you know. It's there are parts of it that didn't age well, you know, but at the same time, it's just an endearing movie, you know, of trying to, you know, I know the movie is about a kid who becomes an adult, but it also makes me wonder, like, as an adult now, should I, you know, try and, you know, look at life like a kid does sometimes and just see the beauty in the everyday all around me. So it's a fun movie. Very funny.
Big's a great choice. Really fun movie. Tom Hanks, man. What a dude. What a dude.
Yeah.
Lo, why don't you go next? What is your number 5?
This is the one that I felt was a bit of a stretch. I put It's a Wonderful Life.
No, but I'm going to trump you.
So, okay.
Yeah.
Snap.
He's actually wishing, so I was like, I don't know if it fits, but yeah.
I think it's pretty much a wish and a fulfilled wish at that. Yeah. So, yeah, I would definitely trump that one. My number 5 is Bruce Almighty.
Trump.
All right. Andrew trumping that. So, Andrew, we're back to you and your number 4.
Bruce Almighty.
Talk on it.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. Whenever I first heard about this movie coming out, I was, you know, hesitant. I'm like, is this going to be a high budget, you know, church movie? But no, it's not. It's yeah, it does deal with faith and stuff like that, but it also deals with the moral conundrums of having absolute power. And just because you think you know what you're doing, I think the biggest thing that comes to mind is how reply yes to all on wishes, you know, and, you know, you can't do that. You know, there's a reason for everything. So, yeah. And of course, you have Jim Carrey being absolutely iconic and Morgan Freeman playing the role he was born to play.
Yes, the creator of the universe.
Yes.
Yeah.
What about you?
I had it at number 5. I almost didn't put it on my list because I did have this kind of intellectual conversation about our prayers wishes. And there's this interesting thing because in modern Christianity, they are almost treated as such. As, you know, the idea of prayer is, God, here are the things I wish would happen. And, you know, then God gets to respond to that however God responds to that. This is not the idea of prayer you get like when you look at scriptures or different things like that. The idea of prayer is more just communication with an ultimate being, but it has morphed into the idea of wishes. So I was having this intellectual conversation, and then I got to the place where I often get in these conversations, which is, just put the movie on your list. It's fine. Everything's going to be okay, Aaron. Everything's going to be fine. I love Bruce Almighty. I think it is a really nuanced look, actually, at the idea of a omniscient creator and how they would handle the fact that everybody wants something different, and this idea of knowing all the ins and outs of how every consequence, every domino falls. Like, that is, I mean, it's mind-bending because we can't comprehend it. And I think that is part of the point of the movie is go ahead, try to comprehend this. Try to comprehend what it means to actually have everybody's life in your hands. And I think overall, even if you're not connected to the faith aspect of it, to the religious aspect of it, you get to ask those questions of and start to see your own life as a part of something as opposed to the only thing, right? Like the idea that my life does have terrible moments. My life does have trauma, and that is not okay, and that is terrible, and nothing makes that okay, and nothing makes that good. However, it is part of this bigger tapestry that tells a bigger story, and because of that, I can process it a little bit differently. That is a tricky concept to wade into, but this movie, I think, does it surprisingly well, and it uses humor to diffuse a lot of that, right? It uses, humor to have us ask those questions. And Jim Carrey is amazing in it. He's prime Jim Carrey during this era and doing amazing work. So yeah, I love Bruce Almighty. All right. So I think that means, Lo, we're on to your number 4. Is that correct?
Yeah,
What do you got?
Labyrinth.
Great choice. Also
barely
honorable
missed my
mentions.
list.
Yeah.
It's just such a, I mean, it's pretty classic in the sense that it literally starts with like, I wish, and getting the consequences of that wish. And it's also just a great fantasy movie, classic 80s fantasy through and through. Who can ever forget the first time they saw those tight pants? It's a movie that sticks with you.
Yep.
It does. Labyrinth is great. I had it in my honorable mentions. Again, it's wild. There was a real fantasy moment around that time too, where there was Willow and Labyrinth and all this stuff, and then it just kind of went away for a couple decades for the most part, and kind of transitioned into sci-fi. Like sci-fi kind of took the place of some fantasy. And
well, Jim Henson, he everything he did was fantastical. So
Dark Crystal.
Exactly.
Yeah. Like you can say Star Wars is fantasy, right? Like it is sci-fi, but it plays in a lot of the same playgrounds as fantasy storytelling does.
And Jim Henson.
And there you go. All right, on to
your number 4.
My number 4. My number 4 is Mary Poppins.
Which one?
The original, the OG Mary Poppins. Maybe stretching it a little bit, but I think this is a wish. I think they make a wish for
the perfect nanny.
The perfect nanny, and she is delivered. Despite the worst English accent of all time existing in this movie, I still think
I don't know what you're talking about.
I think Dick Van Dyke is incredible. I am a huge fan. Him and Julie Andrews in this are just amazing.
Oh, so charismatic.
The kids are great. The movie's a little longer than it probably needs to be. It gets a little stretchy there at the end, but it's all interesting and all fun, and some of the most singable songs ever in a movie. So yeah, I love Mary Poppins.
Mary Poppins.
Very, very much. So that's my number 4. All right, on to our number 3s. Andrew, what do you
got? Might get trumped. Liar, Liar.
I have it at number 3 as well. So let's just talk about it now.
Yay! We've had this movie on our list like 2 weeks in a row somehow.
Hey, listen, it's amazing. Liar, Liar is great.
It is. Primo Jim Carrey, toeing the line between comedy and an actual dramedy. So, yeah, it's great.
Yeah, This Pen is Royal Blue is one of the greatest moments in cinema history. He is so good in that scene. I've said it many times before. I'll just say it again here. This is the movie where I realized Jim Carrey was a capital A actor. And I know for many it came later. For me, this was where I first saw, he's more than a stretchy face. He's actually doing some interesting emotional stuff with this child, with this idea. I was really impressed with Liar, Liar. So, yeah. It's on my list as well.
This movie has one of the simplest yet funniest, maybe it's just the delivery lines in any movie ever. Your client needs your advice. Stop breaking the law, a-hole!
Yeah. Yeah. There's so many scenes in this that are just classic Jim Carrey's. The scene where he gets pulled over is so good. Like, it's just, there's so many scenes in this that I could just watch over and over and over again.
When he beats himself up in the bathroom.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's very Tyler Durden-ish of him.
Yes. Well, Lo, that means we need your number 3.
Yeah,
Yes.
I mean, I mentioned earlier, I'm a massive musical theater fan. Labyrinth is a musical, kind of. Number 3 for me is Rodgers and Hammerstein, specifically Cinderella, 1997, the Brandy, Whitney Houston version. It's a movie from my childhood. It's, I think that, in the sense, Cinderella is always a wish fulfillment movie, but this one specifically talks a lot about wishes and what it means to wish. And I love that it doesn't vilify wishing, which I think a lot of movies can do, and that it's very much like, no, wishing is great. That's what starts you on your path. And I think that that's really beautiful in a very Disney way.
It is, and you're absolutely right. So much, and we saw this in 3,000 Years of Longing, at least the first 3/4 of it. There was a line of, all stories about wishing are about the dangers of wishing, are about be careful what you wish for, are about, that turn that happens. And so you're right. There's something nice about, no, wishing's okay. It's okay to want something more. It's okay to, think something would be amazing. Finding that balance of what it means to want something versus what it means to be content is part of just being human, and something we all have to grow into. But contentment doesn't mean you stop thinking there's better things or stop thinking there's something more that you want. Contentment just means you're okay. I'm okay where I'm at, and here's where I want to be. Those two things can't exist together. And so that's a really good point about Cinderella. So yeah, nice. All right, on to our number 2s. Andrew, what do you got?
Number 2, I'm gonna go with The Wizard of Oz.
Interesting. I didn't even think about The Wizard of Oz as a wishing movie.
I mean, Somewhere Over the Rainbow.
Yeah,
that's one big I Want song.
Well, I was going with that, obviously, and then, the desires, it can be construed as wishes, the brain, the heart, the courage. But I think at the very end, she actually does wish with Glinda the Good Wish. Like, make your wish, tap your heels, and then say, there's no place like home. I think that is pretty close to a wish.
Sure. Yeah, I'll qualify it. Yeah.
It's an iconic classic. It's one of the most famous movies of all time. It's vibrant. It's beautiful. It's capable of giving kids nightmares about flying monkeys. It's a movie we actually don't have that often for some reason on our best ever challenge lists.
No, it's great. It's also one of those movies that is kind of a one of one, meaning like this movie does something that could never really be done in the same way again, in the way that it uses color. And to experience this movie for the first time, not knowing that, must have been really, really interesting. Yeah. And just, now somebody could watch this movie and almost not even notice that it goes from black and white to color. We're just, we've seen many movies kind of transition between black and white and color, use color in different ways. You think of Schindler's List being in black and white, but using, splotches of color.
Yeah.
But for this movie and for those audiences in the 30s or what, I was thinking this 39, something like that.
I wonder if it's, and this is going to sound like a weird comparison, so please forgive me, but I wonder if it's anything like, the first time we saw Avatar in theaters, like with 3D, that change of like a new era in film. And I know there had been colored films before Wizard of Oz, but I think that the dynamic in it there was a focal point of the color.
Yeah, I think we certainly have touchstones. Gravity was a big one too. 3D IMAX of Gravity was a big moment for me, and just going, oh, this is how you can storytell with this technology.
I'm gonna have a heart attack. This is so anxiety inducing.
But there are just some of those movies where I think Psycho is one of those two where, you just can't imagine what it would have been like to actually see Psycho when it came out and to go in thinking Marion Davies was, a superstar and I can't wait to see what happens to her. And then 20 minutes later, she's dead. It's just like those kind of moments are really interesting to me where you can't really recapture them. But
this is neither here nor there, but I just read The Wizard of Oz. And that is actually something in the book that it's black and white in Kansas. Like they talk about how everything's gray and black and white. And I was like, this is weird. I can't believe this is in here.
Yeah.
A movie written in like the late 1800s or a book written in the 1800s.
Just because I know people will correct me. Janet Leigh played Marion Crane. I think I said the absolute wrong name there, so I will correct myself there. Save you an email.
Wait, you messed up on a Hitchcock movie?
I did. All right, so I think that means
Lowe's number 2.
Low, we're on to your number 2.
Did we skip your number 3, Aaron, or am I?
No, it was Liar Liar. We both had Liar Liar.
That's what it
3.
was. Okay,
Yep.
I was like, what?
Yep.
Okay, number 2 for me, another musical and also another Disney movie. I went with Aladdin, the animated version, even though I would gladly.
Oh, looky there! I think we know Andrew's number 1.
Spoilers.
All right, I guess that means my number 2, which was trumped from Low earlier. I have It's a Wonderful Life at number 2. You had it at number 5?
Yeah.
We watch this movie every year, and it is a joy to watch every year. I never get tired of Jimmy Stewart's performance. I never get tired of the little intricacies of this movie, the little nuances. I think all the performances are really good. Blows my mind that this movie wasn't a hit when it came out, that it took years for people to attach to this movie. It's so good. It's so joyful, and it speaks to something so real. This idea, again, of how our story is part of a tapestry and that we don't necessarily understand the impact that we have on other people. And it's a great one. So yeah, I love It's a Wonderful Life. Lo, any other thoughts?
Oh gosh, can't agree more. I think it's just a phenomenal movie. I think I have personally brought this to the Best Ever Challenge 3 or 4 times at this point. And it's not like I'm on this show all the time. I really, really love It's a Wonderful Life, and I'll find any way to squeak it in.
Yep.
I'll watch it one day.
It is on.
Have you really never seen it?
Andrew's list of shame.
What? Sorry, just to really drive home.
What's amazing with a movie like this, though, when it's on your list of shame, is you've probably seen 80% of it. You know what I mean? Like it's in culture enough.
You get the zeitgeist references and everything.
I'm pretty close to a 0 frame pledge on this movie.
You don't know anything about this movie?
Not one bit.
You gotta watch it.
Well,
I mean, like,
watch
I know,
it. That'd be fun. Yeah. Yeah.
Like you said, Jimmy Stewart, and I'm like, oh, I thought it was Cary Grant that was in that movie. So I didn't let you know how much I don't know. Hey, Christmas is right around the corner. I'm sure I'll get to it in a couple years.
That's right. Come over Christmas Eve and watch it with the family. We'll have a good time.
Oh, that's the thing, because I think every family has like their designated Christmas movies that they watch whenever know the holidays comes around. Mine is Muppet Christmas Carol, and it's the best. It's the absolute best. Michael Caine's the best Scrooge.
It is the best adaptation of Christmas Carol, and you can't change my mind.
I can't, because you're not wrong.
I know.
So, I can't. You're right. But yeah, I'll get to it eventually. Maybe. We
will ignore some of the chat who is telling you not to bother. Come on, how dare you, Lolly? How dare you?
Do you think that there's let's dissect that just a little bit while we're still talking about it. Do you think that there is a kind of, tradition element to it that makes you think that it really is that good of a movie? Or do
of course.
Or do you genuinely think that there's something there?
Both are true. Yeah.
I think that it is a phenomenal movie, and you can watch it for the first time and get a lot out of it. It's spectacularly written and acted. And yeah, I mean, like, absolutely, I have nostalgia for it and I'll own that, but it is a good movie. And I don't think anyone would argue differently.
Okay.
I mean, there's somebody out there, but I just like the majority of people are going to say, yeah, it's not just coasting on nostalgia.
Jimmy Stewart's performance alone, it makes this a phenomenal movie.
You mean
He's
Cary
so
Grant?
good. Yeah, I mean Cary Grant. Sorry
Okay.
about that. I get that mixed up sometimes.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to our number ones. Andrew, you kick us off. We know what it is.
Yes, it's going to be Aladdin. Yes.
Yeah.
This is, this was my childhood growing up, I genuinely believe that there is an argument to be made that Robin Williams' portrayal as the genie is the greatest character ever put on film.
There's also an argument to be made that it completely changed the way animated films were cast. Because it was a lot of voice actors before then, and it was a lot of famous people after then. And that is kind of an unfortunate consequence, because it wasn't because he was famous. It was because he nailed the character. And those are, two different things.
I think I'm correct in remembering this, that the directors actually like wrote the character for him and like picked him. They were like, we need Robin Williams specifically.
Yeah. Man, I can't even imagine the cultural impact that character has had. Like if they hadn't have cast Robin Williams, what so much of the world would be different. And that may sound hyperbolic, but with a butterfly effect like that, could change, man. Yeah, some of my favorite Disney songs are in this movie. I do like the when did it come out? 2019, the new live action version. I do like too. How I like the movie, but I also like how they did fix some stuff. Like there was a lot of, I guess you call it whitewashing, even though it's an animated film, but there was cultural whitewashing for the Aladdin movie. Having said all that, though, man, great music, great characters, great visuals. Yeah, it's a great movie. It has to be my number one.
Very nice. Lo, you want to talk about it? I think you had it on your list at number 2.
Yeah, I mean, really, you hit the nail on the head. It's a classic for a reason. It's always on people's top animated movies. It's a great wish movie. You get sort of the classic be careful what you wish for stuff. I mean, I guess more just in the sense that Aladdin doesn't know like how to wish for something that I think what he actually wants. And it's a great movie. I don't know what else to say.
It is good. It's good stuff.
It's weird whenever you talk about a movie this famous and this good. It's like it's hard to talk about. You're like, I mean, everybody knows it's good, right? I don't know what else to say.
Lo, what is your number 1?
My number 1 is 13 Going on 30.
I love this movie. It was
it's so good. So good.
And maybe there's something to be said of it came out in 2004 when I was 14. So I was right in that 14-year-old looking forward to being 30. And now I'm 33 and it still holds up. It's such a fun movie. I think it does a good job of looking at both of those kind of stereotypical age groups and, showing the kind of romanticism of both of them. And, it also has the classic, like, you've wished for something, but what you wanted was there all along. And and you get Gollum dancing with Thriller dance. I mean, I don't know what else you want from the movie.
I totally forgot Andy Serkis was in this movie. Or a young Mark Ruffalo.
Yeah. Oh, great cast. Yeah.
I was not 14 when this movie came out.
I
was
sorry.
29 when this movie came out, and I loved it too. I think this is just a really well done movie. Well told story. And Jennifer Garner is just she's so adorable. I love her so much. So yeah, 13 Going on 30 is a great choice. I stretched for my number 1. I will admit it, but possibly the most famous line from the movie includes the word wish. So I'm going with The Princess Bride at number 1.
That's
a stretch. It's a good movie, but it's a stretch.
But you know what? I'm going to give it to you. Just, knock everything down a peg on my list, and we'll put Princess Bride at number 1. But no, you're right. As you wish.
As you wish, and you could argue that is the center of this movie is that line and what it means to their relationship, and so yes, not in the same context as most of the other movies we're talking about today, but any chance I get to tell people that Princess Bride is one of the greatest movies ever made, I will tell people Princess Bride is one of the greatest movies ever made.
Hot take from Aaron.
Yep. So yeah, I've talked about it plenty of times. I don't need to go into detail anymore currently. But man, this is just a perfectly cast and executed movie, and I really really enjoyed it. Also involves reading a book. So as the
wrap up that storytelling.
Aaron is the reason that you don't read anymore is because you don't have wait just a second. In order for this joke to work, I gotta get the name right.
Yep.
Because I almost said, okay, is the reason that you don't ever read anymore is because you don't have Peter Falk reading to your at bedside. See, it was worth the wait to get to the end of that joke.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is exactly why. If
Granddad
Flo would come read to me, I would be all set. All right, let's talk about honorable mentions. There's plenty of movies that involve wishes that we haven't talked about. Lo, what do you got?
I mean, Disney's entire canon is just
right.
full.
Let's list them. Like Little Mermaid is a wish movie.
Pinocchio, Enchanted, Princess and the Frog, Lilo and Stitch, James and the Giant Peach, Darby O'Gill and the Little People.
Thank you. I was going to close with Darby O'Gill. Let's go.
Really?
Yeah.
Yay! It's a movie I watched a ton as a kid. And
Me too.
It is nuts. It is a weird movie.
It's wild, man. Have you gone back and watched it on Disney Plus?
I just a couple years ago I went through and I was watching every Disney movie in order and got to that one.
So fun.
It's a weird movie, but it's fun.
Yeah. You could also throw Brave in there as well.
Yep.
If you're listing Disney movies.
I really feel like you would be listing over half of Disney's movies in some way, shape, or form. There's a lot of wish fulfillment in there.
Andrew, what do you got?
Just one, The Incredible Mr. Limpet.
Aw, that's a fun movie.
I wish
Knotts, right?
Fish. Yep.
Have you rewatched it recently?
I'm not gonna lie, it's been a minute.
It's weird.
Wasn't Jim Carrey attached to do a relaunch of that, reboot of that?
I've heard this. Like it's
that was a long time ago.
It died off like a while ago. But yeah.
I just it's one of those movies that like older people in my life really loved it, and I was forced to watch it as a kid, and then it's odd.
It's just a sweet movie about a guy who wants to be a fish.
Like Don Knotts.
About a guy who wants to cheat and be with a fish lady. I mean, what's
Why
wrong
not?
with that?
What's wrong with that? I would also, Lo, did you have any more that you wanted to mention?
No, that was
I would also mention Alexander the No Good, Very Bad, Horrible Day. I think is a good movie, and it's definitely a wish movie. Freaky Friday, the original Freaky Friday, is really good as a wish movie. Odd Life of Timothy Green, speaking of Jennifer Garner, is a wish movie. Into the Woods, which I enjoyed very, very much. Definitely has wishing in there. And then Ted is also a wish movie.
I thought about putting Ted, but then I was like, better not. There's a guilty pleasure to Ted. Like there's some funny moments in it, but it's not one I'm gonna put on my list.
It's good. Ted is good, guys. I'm not like I am not a Seth MacFarlane guy. Like I don't generally connect with his stuff. Ted has a little bit of a heart to it. And is really, really funny. And
it's original.
It's very original. It's not necessarily like the exact humor I usually connect to, but I think Ted is actually a well-made movie. So yeah. Well, there you go. Our best ever wishing films. That leaves us with our buried treasures. Lo, you're our guest, so you will get to finish us off. I guess I'll kick us off.
Do it.
I wanted to talk about Welcome to Wrexham, which is a docuseries that has started on Paramount Plus.
I want to watch it so bad. Is it out? It's supposed to come out on Hulu soon.
It's the first 2 episodes are out.
They are 3,000 Years of Longing last night.
Yeah. So there are 2 episodes out as we are recording this on Paramount Plus, I believe. You said Hulu.
FX.
Oh yeah, you're right. Nope, you're absolutely right. It is on Hulu. It is absolutely on Hulu. It is an FX on Hulu joint. So yeah, absolutely correct. Rob McElhenney and Ryan Reynolds bought a small town Welsh football team. That would be in the English or in the rest of the world's version of what football is. So I think Ryan Reynolds is a draw here, where it's like, well, I'm going to watch anything where Ryan Reynolds shows up because he's so fun to hang out with. And that goes for Rob McElhenney as well, who is in It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Yep.
And also, even more importantly, Mythic Quest, which is a lot of fun on Apple TV Plus.
You've never seen It's Always Sunny, have you?
No, I haven't.
One of the funny shows ever made.
Yeah, I believe it. But I like him and I like Ryan. And what I wasn't expecting was to go into this and to immediately connect to the sports part of it, to the taking a team in a town that has been down for so long. And it's just like, what are they doing? What is the plan here? How is this all going to shake out? Watching them be like business people and, stars are just like us in many ways, kind of things going on here. I'm really enjoying this show over the first two episodes, and I really don't care about the soccer leagues in Europe. Like, I'm not a Premier League guy, or I understand. I actually love the concept of promotion and relegation. I think that's a really interesting concept in sports. Mm-hmm. I imagine a world where like the NBA has 4 teams every year or baseball has 4 teams every year that goes down to the minor leagues because they didn't play well and 4 teams come up. I love this idea. I think this is really interesting.
Paintball has that.
What's that?
Paintball has that.
Paintball has
the NXL does it, yeah.
So does, I think, League of Legends. I think they kind of have relegation and promotion to the different series. So it's done in other sports, but not in kind of the main sports here. And so to see it in like the main sport of Europe in how they do this is really interesting. The Wrexham team is in the bottom, like below the actual levels. There's a 5th level. They're in that level, and they're trying to get promoted back up to like the actual top 4 levels.
Well, Wrexham is like is either the oldest or the second oldest team in football history.
Right. So they bought it. And the story of how they bought it and their ownership and what that means to the team and the town is really interesting. So I'm digging this. I'm also digging the meta nature of it, where it's kind of about the documentary in some ways too, because the documentary is a player in all of this, right? Like, it's part of the reason they're doing it is to tell this story. And I'm sure when they had these meetings, they were like, you know what we can do here? We can not only buy a football team, but we can also make this documentary about it. And that'll be another part of this business that we can sell. And that's kind of interesting to see how that plays in to the different parts of it. So
yeah, because then you have the notoriety of Ryan and Rob buying a soccer team. So you're going to get some people who'd never even heard of Wrexham buying merch, buying tickets to go see games. It's a smart move. I'm not going to lie. It's a smart move. Another fun thing is I heard Rob and Ryan had never met nor spoken to each other before they did this.
Correct. This documentary captures their first in-person meeting.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
This is going to be exciting.
Yeah. So yeah, and you can tell that Rob is the driving force here. Rob is the vision here. Ryan is kind of the money come alongside, help. And they even talk about this in the documentary a little bit, that they are kind of online friends just through different things that have happened, but they'd never met before. And so he reached out to Ryan about this, and they decided to do it together. So it's really fascinating. I'm really enjoying it. So yeah, it's a big recommend for me on Hulu. Welcome to Wrexham.
Man, between this and Ted Lasso, Americans are taking over soccer.
Yeah, it does feel very Ted Lasso in some ways. Kind of the real life Ted Lassoing of a club. So yeah. Andrew, what do you got?
Well, Aaron, you're not going to be interested because I'm talking about a comic book and you'll have to read. So,
but there's pretty pictures, so at
There
least
are
I
very
can look at the
pretty
pretty pictures.
there you go. I'm going to go with a series that came out either last year or the beginning of this year. It's a Marvel series called The King in Black. Pretty much what this is it's about the symbiotes, like Venom, Carnage, Toxin, all of them. Giving you a little bit of back history here. The original creator of the symbiotes is named Null. He's the King in Black. He was around before time, pretty much when the Celestials started making the universe. He was the darkness, and he fought the Celestials. Actually, fun fact, the Necro sword that we see in Thor Love and Thunder, that's his sword. So that's why it's so powerful. Yeah. So basically, this is the King in Black finding out that the symbiotes are turning good and stuff on Earth. So he attacks Earth, and he is one of the most powerful villains in Marvel. Totally. He's top 3. And where the story goes, I've talked about it before on the show, but how Venom is used and how Carnage is used, and it's a really fun concept that people like me reading comics, one of the biggest things that we love to do is well, how powerful are they? And then you'll start doing tier rankings and stuff. So something the fun that this one does is it kind of works its way up the ranks with who Null is fighting, a Thor and Hyperion and just a whole bunch of crazy people. It's a fun little story arc that Marvel goes down, and that's coming from a DC guy. I'm throwing some props across the alley. So
there you go, King in Black. What do you got, Lo?
I got a little show that you might have heard of called Dairy Girls.
Oh yeah.
Speaking
3, of Across the Pond.
Yeah, season 3 is meant to be coming to Netflix very soon. I have not yet watched season 3. My husband did, but I'm waiting for it to come to Netflix. But it is, if you haven't heard of it, it is a show that takes place in the, I think, late 80s, early 90s. It might be mostly just the 90s. About a group of teens living in Derry, which is a city in Northern Ireland. And if you know anything about that area, that was a very tumultuous time. But it really doesn't focus too much on that. That's more the background. It's just a classic, sort of nostalgic teen comedy. That's just dealing with all the things that the teens of that time period in that place would be dealing with. It's a bunch of girls and one guy that go to an all-girls school, except for that one guy. And yeah, hilarity ensues. It's very funny. One of the stars has made the transition to she plays Penelope on Bridgerton, if you've watched that at all.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a really funny. It's not a huge thing to bite off to. So if anybody is looking to watch it, it's only 15 episodes, something like that. So for 3 seasons.
I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little disappointed because I'd never heard of it before. When you said Dairy Girls, I thought that it was going to be about farm life.
No, it's 90s kind of lower middle class life.
Ireland.
Yeah, in
so it was
Ireland.
like a milkmaid show,
Yeah.
From the Christmas song.
Yeah, farm life can be hard. And what if this was the first all female owned and operated, dairy farm,
I thought it was going to be about a group of women who took over the local Dairy Queen.
There's a Dairy Queen, and then underneath her are the subordinate
The
Dairy Girls.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Well, there you go. Dairy Girls is on Netflix. The King in Black is a Marvel comic, and Welcome to Wrexham is on Hulu. We did it, guys. We managed to cast some pod. Well done. It's legal in 20 states now to cast pod. I've heard. Thanks so much for joining us today. Sif Pop is part of the Studio DNA podcast network. You can find out more about other shows on the network at studiodna.media or by searching Studio DNA in your podcast player. Huge thanks to Andrew for hanging out again today.
Thank you, buddy.
Big thanks to producer Phil for producing the audio and video show.
Thanks, Phil.
And thank you to Lo for hanging out again today.
Thank
Love you, Lo.
Continuing my streak of talking about traumatic birth stories. Although this time it was just on the pre-show. So.
That's right. It was the pre-show where we talked about the traumatic birth story.
You got to get another somewhere. You know?
I know.
Yeah. It's a staple. Lo, where do you want people to find you online?
Twitter would be the best place, at the Curious Lo, all one word.
At the Curious Lo on Twitter if you want to check out the other stuff that Lo is involved in. Much love and gratitude to our Sif Pop members for giving monthly to make Sif Pop a real thing. Support starts at $3 a month. You get access to bonus episodes at different levels, all sorts of fun stuff. You can check all that out at patreon.com/siftpop. Lots of ways to connect with us. You can leave a comment, a rating, or a review at Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you listen. You can also email us, feedback@siftpop.com. And finally, if you're having a good time, your movie-loving friends will probably like the show too, so make sure you let them know about it and that listening is much easier than safely walking across wet stone. We will be back next week with more movies from this really, really sparse August-September calendar.
Samaritan is out right now. I think that's the big one.
Yeah, maybe. Of the 3 or 4 I was considering, I haven't even heard of Samaritan. So
It's the new Sylvester Stallone movie.
We'll see. We'll pick a couple movies to talk about. We'll catch you next week. Love y'all. Bye.
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 Live chat. Thanks for hanging out. Both YouTube and Twitch kind of hopping on the chat this morning. Appreciate it. Lolly and Doc, I see you over there hanging out on Twitch. Gonk and Jay Bourgeois hanging out on YouTube. Joe the Bearded Nerd also on Twitch. Love you guys. Thanks for hanging out with us live. Let's see. Gonk says, do you think it's the kind of movie that could be built off by other filmmakers in the future to make a better movie? This was about 3,000 Years of Longing. I don't want a sequel. The way it ends kind of negates any kind of sequel opportunities, really, in my opinion.
No,
So it would have to be something different.
I think that it's a pretty basic concept that somebody could just make a better movie about Jin lore.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's a well of stuff to pull from.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So appreciate all the fun comments. Let's see. Jay Bourgeois saying the camera being in the Zoom pitch meeting was the funniest part of the first 2 episodes. That was pretty funny in Welcome to Wrexham. That was really hilarious. Lolly says, dying for season 3 of Dairy Girls. It was on UK TV months ago. I need Netflix to catch up. That show is incredible. I've heard really good things.
It's so good.
My list is so long
Dairy
on
Girls.
TV. Like it's
they're like 20-minute episodes. It's like a classic.
But it doesn't. But it doesn't matter because if I add it to the list,
it's just
then
another
it becomes
drop in the
another
bucket.
thing.
Yeah.
And like it's almost like when they're 20-minute episodes and there's only 15 of them. I'm like, okay, well someday when they're all done.
Yeah.
It'll be
they're done. This is the final season.
Then maybe that's it. Maybe after season 3, maybe I'll binge the whole thing. I don't know. I've just got so much. Like I was looking at my list last night, like because I just managed to catch up on one of my shows, and I was like, okay, what next? And I was like, oh, ugh. So I think I'm gonna watch the new season of Hacks next, and then go from there. But like picking what's next, it like becomes homework, right? Like why is watching TV homework now? It shouldn't be homework. It should be fun. But yeah, welcome to my trauma. I have to watch too much entertainment.
It's a struggle.
Yeah. Okay, thanks guys. We'll catch you on the next one. Appreciate you hanging out live.
Somebody asking in the chat, is there hope for a Summer Sum game this year?
Ooh, well, not this year.
Or next year, sorry.
Next year, yes. Next year, I hope the Summer Sum game will be back. The Oscar picks will be back for sure again. And then hopefully Summer Sum game will be back next summer. So, yeah.
Hopefully the Oscar live show is less exciting.
No, let's keep it exciting. Are you kidding me? Bring it on. Let's go. Makes it fun. I mean, I don't want anybody, physically assaulting anybody necessarily. I'm just saying, fun shows are fun.
That's true.
All right. We'll catch you guys on the next one. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.